Uh, is Penny there?
She just
Yeah.
waved.
Okay.
Roll call.
Hey, Penny. Yeah,
Hi, Dr. Smith,
I'm here.
Dr. McBride,
Here.
Ms. Rios,
Here.
Dr. Garza,
Here.
Dr. Hubner,
Here.
Bishop Hankerson. He's just here, right? And Dr. Hendricks. I mean, he's on.
Good morning. Sorry, I had a
Good
hard
mor-
time signing in.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Penny. And thank you, Dr. Hendricks, for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll go to you shortly. But first, we need to approve the October minutes, which we did not approve at the November meeting. And we're not going to be approving the November minutes at the December meeting, but we will approve both November and December at the January meeting. So all of you should have received the October minutes earlier this week. Unless, is there any discussion around the October minutes or anyone needing any clarifications? Hearing none, I would move for the approval of the October meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, say no. Okay, looks like we have a unanimous vote to approve the October meeting minutes. All right, next item on the agenda is the DPH budget presentation to the county executive. So, Dr. Hendricks, you take it away.
Oh, quite honestly, I wasn't prepared. I didn't see this on the agenda. Was there something specific that you wanted me to address?
Well, I think Scott maybe wanted you to talk a little bit, and I know Scott wanted to talk a little bit. I was going to kind of segue from this into a conversation about the broader budget meeting. We had a win this week. A couple weeks ago, as some of you recall, the article that I think Tim sent to our list was featured a proposed cut of 16 COs to the facility. And I was in communication with several council members. Scott was in communication with the county executive's office and some council members. And we were able to avert that, I think, what would have been a pretty bad outcome on the correction side. Scott, do you want to speak to that at all?
Well, yeah, so we, on Tuesday night, the council agreed to provide the 16 additional corrections officers. And I just saw on the agenda about the budget meeting, so I didn't realize that there was anything else involved in relaying. So somehow I've missed that communication, but I can tell you CGL has indicated that we are 80 officers short. So our plan is to request 16 additional officers each year for 5 years so that we can get to a point that's consistent with similar sized jails.
Yeah.
For our staffing.
And in terms of DPH, our initial budget request was about $81 million. And we ended up, I think, with about 76 million. And the main gist of the budget proposal and what was accepted was that we would not be able to fill 75% of our unfilled vacancies in our jobs, with the intent that, we have a hard time filling those anyway, but later on in the year, if it looks like we are able to fill some of those unfilled positions, that we could come back to the council for additional remuneration for that. But we think we can work within this budget. We're still working very closely to try to address the vacancies in correction medicine within the jail. But we are hoping that this next week's Civil Service Commission will allow us to raise some of our salary limits for nursing particularly, so that we may be able to rely less on outsourcing to contracted agencies. So that's going in front of the Civil Service Commission this week, and we're hoping that they will allow us to do that given the crisis within nursing in our region.
We've had a bunch of conversations about this that predate you on joining us. What level? I feel like when we were having these conversations like a year ago, we were told that the average, like the hourly rate that we were paying for nurses was around $30 an hour ish, and we're told that like people were paying, and this was like closer to the height of the pandemic, is that on the open market people were getting like $175 an hour,
Yeah.
which obviously is a massive disparity that'll keep us from being able to hire anybody. What are you proposing?
Well, we're proposing to raise the level throughout DPH, not just corrections. Corrections does get a 10% bump just because of hazard pay, that type of thing. So the main thing we're trying to do is fill a present vacancy in the nurse manager situation. We did fill the psychiatry need. That particular group started this about a week ago. With onboarding or seeing patients physically in the jail, as opposed to what we had previously. We still have needs within the intake area where we use paramedics. We're going to be using paramedics actually more in terms of vaccinations throughout the intake process. If the residents have not had flu vaccine or COVID vaccine, they're going to be offered that as well. So we're hoping to raise the level a little bit, but we still rely significantly. Almost 70% of our our nursing staff is contracted through agencies. And just as a for instance, an LPN, which is a lower skill level than a nurse, our agencies charge us $60 an hour for those LPNs, as opposed to, like you say, the $30 or so an hour that we can pay our RNs. But if they are DPH employees, they're eligible for tuition reimbursement, for fringe benefits. So some of that is can't always be factored into that, but we still rely too heavily on agencies. That's why we really want to try to increase the pay scale so that we can attract people
and be less penny wise. I guess we're being, penny wise, pound foolish by not being willing to pay a permanent salary that's adequate, which is causing us to pay constant, ongoing, short-term, exorbitant prices for this.
Right. I mean, and to that point, many of our contracted nurses have expressed interest in becoming full-time. So hopefully we can, by raising the rates, attract more of them to do that. But these are not fly-by-night people. They tend to be people that are committed to working in the jail system. And even though they're contract and they come through an agency, they're still very devoted. And many of them have been there for, most of the pandemic. So it is, it's not as severe a disparity. It's not what we'd like, but it's not as severe a disparity as it might indicate.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Tim.
You're welcome.
Yeah, real quick. First of all, I want to thank everybody who worked hard on this, Scott and Jeff, and the council members who supported this. I understand that the budget pressures are difficult, which is kind of bizarre to me. I guess it's got something to do with the Hancock Amendment, but we're in a good economy. What I understand from the articles, we may not be out of this budget pressure yet. So I think it's important that we keep sending the message that this is important. for the reasons that we just heard. And also, we're going to talk about the recent incident. And so we, we're down staff. I mean, I think the council understands this, but it leads to safety concerns. And that's why they approved the additional staff positions in the first place. And going in the other direction, penny wise, pound foolish. Doesn't just raise overtime costs, but it could raise real costs in terms of lives and other costs. So,
which is a good segue to our next item around staffing policy. Before I go to it, I just want to I want to thank all the council members, reiterate what Tim just said, give a special thank you to Council Member Clancy, who was super proactive and wanting to get all the information around our staffing challenges and has taken a real interest in the jail and been very helpful. So I want to acknowledge that. If there are no other questions on that, let's move on and use your segue, Tim, to talk about staffing policy, in particular, as it relates to, the recent incident in the jail whereby a CO was injured and assaulted. I know that one of the conversations that kind of came out of the comprehensive review was whether we had adequate staffing in each pod. And if I'm not mistaken, Scott, we had a two COs per pod directive that was issued. Is that accurate?
Yes, the directive has been in place since November of 2021 following two assaults of officers. And the policy continues to be 2 officers per pod. There are some occasions where we would allow 1 officer. For example, if there are COVID restrictions limiting the population to a small number of people out, less than 25, or if in a COVID pod where only 10 people are out at a time with distancing, or in the workers pod where people are working in the kitchen, so there's very few people out. But all of the pods,
those working in the kitchen are already kind of like a special category of people who have shown, positive behavior and trust over a long period of time, which is why they're allowed to be in that situation, right?
yes.
So that situation or the COVID, restriction situation, if I'm not mistaken, those were not applicable to the situation that occurred a few weeks ago, right?
Correct. Yeah. And the situation is still under investigation. I do expect charge to be filed soon.
Okay, so that's good that it. But can we talk about kind of the if it wasn't a COVID restriction situation, it wasn't in the kitchen or in the laundry, facility where we're talking about detainees that have, privileges and have earned those privileges kind of over a long period of time. Can you give us a sense of why the 2 CO per pod policy that was, I think, you put into place November 2021, so it wasn't like a new policy. Why wasn't it being followed that day?
Yeah, I'm still looking into that, Jeff, and I've clarified now and actually set up some new procedures to make sure, because I come into the jail frequently on weekends, holidays, different shifts, and have now implemented a process so that the shift report will reflect the names of the 2 officers that are observed in the pod when the watch commanders do the tours. So there'll be a record of that there were 2 officers in the pod at all times. And we have clarified the policy into the policy manual that 2 officers will be in those pods unless there are COVID restrictions or less than 25 or the workers unit.
Okay, so do we know if, I'm just wanting to understand like what happened that day, because I want to understand if it was an aberration or if we have like a systemic issue. So I guess my more specific question is, was what happened that day, like if we can tell from surveillance or whatever digging, that you've done, was it that one CO like wandered away or wasn't on duty when they should have been? Or was it, do you see it as being a more systemic thing where they're just, for some reason, somewhere in the management chain, they didn't assign 2 people?
I can tell you that the article that was written that mentioned that this had been happening since the spring is not accurate, and I have talked with people that have confirmed that. So the situation is, as it stands now, is that there was one officer in that pod, and we're investigating how that happened.
Do you feel like that was due to a staffing shortage, or do you feel like at the current level of staffing is adequate to ensure that there is always 2 officers per pod in those pods where it's necessary?
Well, we clearly have a shortage of staff, but we also are able to maintain 2 officers in that pod by rotating the pods that are open, and that's been in place even when we were 84 officers short at the time that was implemented. So we're going to make sure that there are 2 officers in those pods, that the policies comply.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you want to ensure that going forward. It seems common sense to me that given all the challenges we've had and the multiple assaults on COs, that for the safety of everybody in the facility, we should always have someone who can immediately jump in and and help if there's an issue. So I'd love to. You said that you're looking into this, so I'd love to get a better sense at our January meeting if we can learn more about where the hiccup occurred along the way that resulted in only one CO being there that day, because that's certainly if your policy is one thing, it's something that you've reiterated, that's not what's happening, and it results in an incident like this. I think it's something that the board would like to get to the bottom of. If there was, some bigger issue than just a momentary lapse. I will say one thing that I think is a silver lining, and just sort of informed by my own experience behind bars. If there would have been a CO where I was incarcerated that was attacked by, an inmate, then the other inmates would have all just walked in the other direction. And so I was heartened by the fact that they all seem, if our conversations afterwards and reading the article seemed to confirm that they all jumped in to help to assist and separate the 2, and then restrain the angry assailant. Is that accurate?
Well, I think we are very fortunate that we're able to intervene and that the officers and the lieutenants got there quickly. And I'm very, very thankful she's okay. My concern is always for the staff and their safety, which is why I established that policy. And I just can't state how committed I am to making sure that we're providing 2 officers per pod. There's research that shows that events like that are less likely to occur. If there are 2, you have extra eyes and ears, you call for help. There are just so many reasons that that's important. And in September, we actually created an overlapping 8 to 5 shift to allow residents to get out more time as well. So this is something that it's just something that we have to make sure is in compliance.
Okay. With apologies to the rest of the board, because I know I have not given space for other people to weigh in here. So let me do that right now. Go ahead, Tim.
Just real quick, I mean, you asked the very good questions, and I just want to reiterate what you said. It's not our role in the board to micromanage what happens in the day-to-day operations of the jail, but I think our role is to help set policy and to help give guidance to the leadership to set policy, and especially in mind of the recent consulting report, what Scott just said and the questions you're asking are in alignment with that consulting report. So I think having two officers in the pod is what that said. And so I think getting to the bottom of why that didn't happen, why the policies were not followed, is really the right question, it seems to me. And, there's cultural questions were raised in that report. And so whatever the reason is, that's what I'd love to know. And that's kind of our role as the board.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim. And just to be clear, this is not, I think this is the trend in all law enforcement. It's certainly the trend in policing to go to, pairs, patrolling in cars. And so it's not, I don't think we're pushing for anything that's like, specific to this facility or even to jails relative to law enforcement more broadly. Any other questions on staffing more broadly, or staffing as it relates to what happened a few weeks ago? Okay, good deal. Let's move on to in custody death situation. So, Scott, is Liz in the room? Oh, I see you, Liz. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning,
I'm good.
Liz. So we are hoping, per our conversation last meeting and then some subsequent communication via email, to just get a synopsis of the the current policies for everything that you all do in the wake of an in custody death. So I'm wondering if you and perhaps Scott will weigh in as well, can go through that with us first, and then that'll be a jumping off point to a couple other conversations. Liz?
Okay, so Corrections Medicine does have a policy in regards to procedures in the event of an inmate death. Justice Services has a policy for an inmate death, and they're the ones that are ultimately responsible for contacting the next of kin. They're responsible for contacting the Clayton Police Department. Medical will be here on site, whether it is Dr. Heinrichs, myself, or a nurse manager, or the medical provider that is on duty at that time, to be available to the Clayton Police to provide them with any medical records that they request or any assistance in doing an investigation on site. Then we will conduct a morbidity and mortality review shortly after that event would take place.
What's the time frame shortly after? Can you give us just a time frame?
We have attempted in our past to do it within the week, but in our policy, there is not a specific time frame within that you're supposed to conduct it. My understanding from talking to other correctional facilities, and Dr. Davis has stated that other entities will do it within 30 days. We try and do it sooner rather than later, but in our policy, it does not state a specific time frame. So we will conduct that, and that would be with the Chief Medical Officer for DPH, our medical team, anybody who was a part of providing medical care to the patient prior to the patient expiring. And then, of course, after we do the morbidity and mortality reviews, then you will review all the care, the incidents leading up to the patient's death, and any recommendations as far as any policy changes, anything that would need to be corrected in the future. I can share this as far as I can have Penny scan the policy to you all if that's something that you would like.
Yeah, I do think that's something that we would like. I want to see also, Dr. Heinrichs, do you have any, do you want to add anything to what Liz said? I think you're on mute, Doctor. I think you're muted, Dr. Heinrichs.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, yes. But we couldn't hear what you just said, though.
Is that better now?
It is better now.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think generally the few that I've been involved in over the last 6 months or a year, we've had the morbidity and mortality conference actually within 2 or 3 days of the event. And this is a situation where we want people to be forthright in their evaluation of how the event went. So this is something, as with most hospital situations, this is a peer review protected type of event and type of committee meeting, so that everybody is free to weigh in on what was done correctly, what was done perhaps more slowly than others. But this is something that is very common practice within hospital settings, so that the real situation can be evaluated and people feel protected by their confidentiality.
Thank you. So I appreciate that, Liz and Dr. Heinrichs. Scott, do you want to weigh in on your side of the house in terms of in custody deaths?
I'm gonna defer the question to Darby Howard, our Deputy Director of Security, who's there in the room.
Well, we follow each policy as far as when it comes to the death custody investigation team, and a recent incident as well. So, and that is to collaborate with medical, Clayton Police. We'll assemble right within 24 hours after death, and with the Internal Affairs investigator, Mr. Jeff Seiler, and we start compiling information, reports, process of notifying the family as soon as possible. So all of that was followed as far as policy. I can assure you that. So, and the investigative process is kind of, we follow the DPH. We don't know anything until there's coroner reports and stuff like that.
Okay. So I know there's been, so Liz, we appreciate you scanning and sharing that with the board. I know that our healthcare subcommittee, which is comprised of Alex, Tim, and Nina, who kindly has volunteered to chair that healthcare subcommittee. Nina, thank you.
Yes.
So going forward, our communications will reflect that, and I think maybe Nina and Alex can have a conversation offline to reflect some recent conversations that I think we've been having with the county counselor's office to try to ensure that the board has representation throughout that process. Alex, do you want to say any more?
I think you summarized it well there, Jeff. Just trying to figure out a path forward on this that can check all the boxes and meet meet everybody's needs. I will say, well, I think we should review the policy and then we can make some recommendations on how we could tighten it up.
Okay, great. Well, I will, after we get that from Liz, then Nina, Tim, Alex, and I can kind of share what we think would be appropriate if there are changes needed. And then why don't we plan to present maybe recommendations back to the leadership next meeting? Would that work? Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you all for that. Why don't we move to just getting a quick update on the most recent death at the facility. And I think the update is going to be that there is no update. Scott, is that right? In terms of like getting toxicology reports back?
That's right. We have no further at this time.
Do you have a time frame for us? Any sense of when you expect it? I know there's a backlog.
I wish I did. We didn't get information. We still don't have information regarding the previous deaths. So you're right. There is a delay.
Okay. Well, we will persist, and we will have this on the agenda next meeting, and hopefully the results will be back by then, and we can learn more about what happened. Because he was the guy was like 29 years old and seemingly in good health, and so we certainly want to get to the bottom of what happened. All right. If there's nothing else on either in custody death policies or the recent death, then we'll move on to more pleasant items, and Scott can give us an update on the community college class.
Well, Monday morning, the 19th, we have pre-testing for students, and those classes will start January 17th. There'll be 2 courses being offered, and there'll be 8-week courses. And then upon completion of those 8 weeks, they'll be enrolled in additional classes, and others will start those classes, so that we'll continue to build. We're in the process of obtaining secure laptops that can download content, and then they can safely and securely utilize those laptops to complete assignments back in their cells. This is technology that's been in place in Missouri Department of Corrections in Bonne Terre. So then upon release, we also have a nonprofit agency that may donate laptops to them if they verify that they have registered to continue on in college.
That's pretty cool. Who's the nonprofit?
It's well, they're working on the approval, Jeff. So I prefer not to share that yet. But as soon as it's in place, I'll be glad to do that.
Okay, cool. Just want to recognize publicly if they're generous enough to do that.
I definitely would love to do that too. So hopefully soon.
Okay, that's great to hear. Any questions about the community college class? They're going to be like you, Tim, working right through the holidays. Okay, nothing else on that. Next agenda item is a update on CGL recommendations. Scott?
So we have been working on the recommendations. 2 are remaining, and they tend to be geared around our segments and how we're handling people with mental health. And Deputy Director Howard is facilitating teams on those. They have policies drafted, and they're working on a training plan now for implementation. Deputy Director Howard.
you want to comment?
I think so.
Yes, yeah, we have drafted the policies, Scott's reviewing them, and there will be some training and policy review by everybody, to include staff, to go over to make sure that everybody understands that there's some changes, even like I mentioned earlier about the last meeting. Use of force is no longer use of force, it's response to subject behavior. The step-down unit was one of them, where we were not allowing, detainees to stay in the ADSEG for long periods of time. Got that pretty much drafted where, the next continuation of that is once they get out of that lockdown area, put them in a house, and try to work them back in the general population. Then we'll try to work with DPH about trying to get some mental health treatment for some, and counseling, stuff like anger management, to try to have them transition with those behaviors back into regular populations. So that's the next phase we're working on.
And Deputy Director Holman has been working with the Human Resources Department on creating new positions for unit manager and redefining the roles. Deputy Director Holman, can you provide some context to that?
Sure. We're actually in really good position in regard to the CGL recommendations. We will be in a position probably in January to add the unit manager positions that the report recommends. Obviously, some of the changes will be based on attrition, so that may change the timeline somewhat. But as far as the administrative duties recommended in the report, we're pretty much to the level that we need to be to implement those changes in the future.
And I think the remaining recommendations are geared around Department of Public Health. Liz, is there anything you have to add?
Just that Dr. Heinrichs is arranging a meeting with Dr. Davis, myself, and Dr. Cunningham from the Department of Public Health to go over the recommendations to see what we're able to work on at this particular moment based off of our current staffing levels.
Thank you.
So we have that arranged for next week.
So one other thing that comes out of the CGL review is, and this makes sense, is that we should add Dr. Heinrichs to our health subcommittee. So Dr. Heinrichs, I think it will help with coordination if you're part of those conversations earlier in the process that we're having internally, as a board, at a board subcommittee. Would you like to join that committee that will be reviewing the in custody death policy? You're muted again, but I think that was a yes. It was okay. Well, I will take that as a yes, and we will add you to that subcommittee. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah,
I know that the cabinet has a meeting at 10 o'clock this morning out
I'm sitting in
Babler Park.
I'm sitting in the parking lot outside Queenie.
You're sitting in the parking lot. So that's why Scott and Dr. Heinrichs are not are operating remotely today. So okay, well we will make sure you're included on all further correspondence to that committee. All right.
Hey, Jeff, real quick.
Yes, Tim.
So I appreciate that update. Just a request, if I could, that CGI spreadsheet that we've seen earlier, which was very helpful. As that's being updated, it's pretty long and detailed. If it's possible, if that could be sent out to the board, maybe with the minutes or something, so I could review it, just to sort of see where we're going on that. Would be helpful, I think, because, I thought that is good for process in following up. So that's just a suggestion.
Definitely. Hey, Randy, are you the custodian of that? Or is Darby?
It's a team effort, but, yes, I certainly keep it, and Director Anders keeps it updated as well.
Okay, great. If just as a follow-up to this meeting, if you could just send us out, I know it's got the nice color coding so we can see where everything is. If you could distribute that, that'd be great.
Thank you.
We can do that, absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Okay, why don't we move on to the corrections medicine dashboard? Liz, take it away.
I don't know that we have dashboards, but I got a COVID update.
Okay,
We do. I mean, I can display the dashboards. I saw the agenda. I think that mine and Liz's are just lumped into this.
okay.
Yeah. Liz,
Sure.
do you want me to display dashboards?
I mean, it's up to you, Aaron.
All right, well, I'll share screen. We can go through
Okay.
all of them.
It's pretty much status quo.
All right, well, I'll go through the DJS ones and then we can go through the corrections medicine ones. We just do all the dashboards at once. Daily population as of this morning was at 803. We did dip down in November. Well, I did not, I was not present at the November meeting, but the population did get down to the mid 700s, 764. In December, we went up a little bit. We were at 829, but now as of today, we're back down to 803. So overall, solid news. As for use of force, we're also fairly solid. The number this month was just over 30 per 1,000 residents, fairly in line with the last 6 to 12 months worth of data. Let me just touch on another couple highlights on the supplemental dashboard. For overtime hours, excuse me, the last 2 months, October and November, the numbers have been lower, in the low 4,000s. This is the lowest we've had in about 2 years on a monthly basis.
That's good.
Yeah, so you can see the trend going from almost 7,000 in mid 2021 down to almost a little over 4,000 now.
One thing I'd noticed was I think a rise in the hospital posts. Anyone
Yes, it was
have any,
higher this past month.
yeah, any particular reason for that?
I do not know personally. However, I will say that, we've had spikes like that on a monthly basis before. You see one here in July 2021, January 2022, and then last month. But I'm not privy to the specific details of the particular ones. So if anybody else has any info on that, I'll let you chime in.
Well, and then a second question. Sorry, go ahead, Liz.
No, go ahead and ask your question, and then I can talk about hospital posting.
My second question was on a different topic, so you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Just that, yes, over the last several months, we have had our patients that have come into the facility with some major illnesses that Dr. Davis has sent out in order for the hospitals to be able to, they can provide specialized care that we cannot necessarily do the testing and the care within the facility. So we have had some individuals that have gone on medical furloughs and currently in rehab facilities. But over the last 2 months, we've had more hospital posts than we've had in quite a while.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I also had a question about, so, I mean, I knew this was going to come up here, and so I waited for it to come up here, but I mean, it relates to what we already talked about with staffing policy. You can see the rise in the resident to corrections to CO ratio.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, Scott, I feel like in our conversations, you've told me that there were about maybe 20 resignations-ish since our last board meeting.
So I'm trying to get my video started. Bear with me 1 second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can hear
Okay. For some reason, I'm not able to get the video started, but the last 2 months there has been an increase in resignations, but on a good note, we have a class of 7 that just started on Monday of this week, and we interviewed 12 people on Thursday, and then we have additional 4 that'll be starting before the end of the year. So anticipate that we'll recover from that quickly, and hopefully we can work on better employee retention.
You know, I don't want to sound like, I'm glad that you've got a new class starting, and I appreciate your constant attention to recruitment, but I am concerned about the recent rise in resignations. And again, don't mean to sound like a broken record, but what are we hearing from the people who are leaving about their reasons?
Well, there have been some disciplinary matters, but people who are resigning, some have gone to other jobs. We are continuing to work on training for supervisors and how they're communicating with staff. And so that's an ongoing process. We'll continue to provide training and address those things as we're moving forward. But I can say that since November, we've had 36 resignations, and when I started, we were losing about 12 per month. So we have made significant progress. Just the last couple of months that there has been an increase. So we'll work through that.
Wait, can you say that statistic one more time? Since November, there have been 36, you said?
Yes. Since November, there have been 36 resignations, but a higher number of those have come in the last 2 months. So, but when I started, we were losing over 12 officers per month. A significant improvement, other than the last 2 months.
So, what is the process for filing? Just can you explain the logistics of the process for like exit interviews? Like, who does exit interviews? Where is it recorded?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This is Jen Frank from the County Counselor's Office. Sorry to interrupt, but I don't think this topic was on the agenda, so I would recommend that, if possible, that you defer it until the next meeting, maybe under an extended director's report, something like that. But I just don't see that this topic was noticed up on the agenda.
I think staffing policy was noticed on the agenda. And I also think that this is a direct, these questions like follow directly from the item on the dashboard.
I understand that, but it was the corrections medicine dashboard that appears on the agenda.
I don't really know why the DJS dashboards didn't end up on the agenda.
And I'm
Jeff,
not sure either. That's probably my fault.
Jeff, I'm going to also have to jump off because we're presenting an award to Lieutenant Charles Warden. The county executive is recognizing him at the cabinet meeting, and he was involved in a life-saving effort with our DPH medical team in the intake unit. So I'm going to have to jump off to present that award, and I'll be happy to follow up on this in more detail next month.
Okay, why don't we plan next month to make sure we have a specific agenda item on the process. First of all, the process for getting feedback from exiting staff members. And secondly, if we can get some visibility into what that feedback has been over the last couple months, I think the board would appreciate that. Is that Do other board members agree?
I think that's really important.
Okay.
And we can put the DJS and corrections medicine dashboards on one line together so that we can talk about everything on all the dashboards.
Okay,
Will
sounds
do.
good.
Yep.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you, Jen. Thank you, Scott.
So given that, I don't have any other updates on DJS data, but if anybody has any questions for me before I pass it on to Liz that safely fall under what we can talk about, please feel free to ask.
Any other questions from anyone? Sorry that I've been kind of dominating today.
Not exactly, but I'm a little confused about the agenda because it does say corrections medicine dashboard, but whatever, we're gonna bring it up next time. Scott's gone anyway, so we can move on.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else dashboard wise? Okay, thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Liz. Is there anything else that you have, Liz, before we move on?
We have done over 24,000 COVID tests, only 607 positives, and we have one current positive individual in the facility who is doing well. Nothing to report in that area as far as anything of concern regarding COVID. We continue to offer the vaccines, flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine. And we are testing for flu, COVID, all of that for anybody who comes in may have some symptoms. So we are prepared to treat them if anybody should get that.
That's thank you, Liz. I mean, I think that given the recent rise in the general public, to only have one positive right now seems pretty extraordinary to me. And again, a tribute to your great work in this area. I mean, haven't we seen? I mean, I'm sensing a lot more people that I know, and just reading about it a lot more the last couple of weeks. So well done.
That's all medicine has. Thank you.
Yeah, real quickly, and again, I echo what Jeff just said. I was wondering because as we are hearing and seeing in the data, the flu cases are kind of, and Alex probably knows this better than we do, are filling the hospitals. I was wondering when we saw the hospital numbers going up, if some of that was flu, or it appeared to be not, but none of that's flu. I guess that was a question. Are any of those hospital visits due to the flu?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was a question to you.
No. There were other medical conditions as far as why they needed additional testing, and Dr. Davis needed them to be cared for. So nothing flu-related or COVID-related.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Liz. Penny, is there any public comment?
There were none. None.
No public comments. Okay, well, I want to take a moment here before we take the date of the next meeting to recognize Beth Hubner, who has been a tremendous asset to this board, to this facility, and to the whole community. We are going to miss you on the board. Are you moving to Arizona, or are you in January, or are you staying here through the school year?
No, I will. Yes, I will take my position January 3rd.
Okay. Well, when we're freezing, we'll be thinking about you in sunny Arizona. But I'm so grateful for the expertise that you've added directly through the board, through your work with the MacArthur Foundation, a lot of the population reductions that we've seen are due to your work and your expertise that you've brought to bear. When we were first constituted as a board, we were looking at 1,200 people in the facility a lot of the time, some months, and now we're down around 800. And your insights have helped a lot of people who didn't need to be locked up be with their families and be at work and contributing to this community. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on the board. And I am happy to say that even though I won't be able to be on the board anymore since I will be at Arizona State, but I will continue my work with MacArthur and be back and forth to St. Louis quite often. So I'll continue my jail work just in a different capacity. So I hope the board, I'm always welcome or happy to present to the board or share any information from our MacArthur work as we continue. So thank you all for including me on this great board, and I wish you best of luck in the future.
Thank you. We have been in some preliminary conversations over the last couple months with a fantastic woman also from academia who I think is going to be slated to come and fill your term, and we'll hopefully be able to share news on that in the new year. So we'll miss you, but glad to hear you won't be far and you'll be back and forth and continuing to contribute in new ways. So, all right. Our next meeting will be January 27th. So after the holidays, we'll go back to the fourth Friday. So I will see you all on January 27th. Before then, our to-dos will be to review the health subcommittee, review the in-custody death policy, and then on staff and leadership side to work on the exit interview issue, that we discussed and come back to us with that. So thanks everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and everybody have a wonderful break. Take care.
Ho, ho, ho.
Have fun being Santa, Tim.
Yeah.
And can we get an adjournment? I move to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All those opposed say no. The meeting is adjourned. Have a great weekend.
Bye.